All right, we're back for our second broadcast of the day. I feel like I was just here. Welcome back, everyone, to Resistance Live for the 22nd of April, 2024. Glad you're all here. Okay, so I promised everybody on the broadcast this morning that we would do an extra bonus broadcast day with a little bit on David Pecker, but I also want to point out that we have a little bit of an update now with regard to the GAG order hearing tomorrow morning. So I'm going to touch on that also. First things first, as always, I'm coming to you from occupied Tongva territory here in Southern California. And as I was this morning, I am wearing a white button-down shirt. I am a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty, blonde-haired woman. I'm in my office in front of my green plant and my lamp and my big cushy chair for our visually challenged viewers. Welcome. And my pronouns are she, her. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what happened in the final moments of the hearing today when David Pecker was called to the stand. As you all know, editor-in-chief of the National Enquirer has cut a cooperation agreement with regard to the prosecution and is here testifying as the first witness to essentially set the stage for the agreement that was undertaken between Trump and Michael Cohen and the National Enquirer to engage in what has now been described as a catch and kill scheme, meaning that the National Enquirer, at the behest of the Trump campaign, would enter into contracts for stories against Donald Trump, pay the people who were coming forward with their stories for the exclusive rights to those stories, and then kill the story. This conspiracy also included publishing favorable stories to Donald Trump and against his competitors, folks like Ben Carson and Ted Cruz, to benefit the Trump campaign. And this all leads up to, eventually, the falsification of documents in the form of, in part, the paybacks to Michael Cohen, who put his own money forward to pay off Stormy Daniels and was then reimbursed by the Trump administration, well, really by Trump himself, because we know 2 of the checks came out of his personal bank account now. And those documents were, of course, not correct. They were fraudulent. And also, documents that were filed with regard to election campaign finance issues were falsified to not include this as an in-kind donation. So we're in a situation now where David Pecker is essentially going to set up the totality of the scheme involving Donald Trump as a form of election interference. Now, we have a long way to go in David Pecker's testimony. He was only on the stand for half an hour this morning, but I do want to point out that the fact that he was even called is an indication of how tightly run Judge Merchan's courtroom is. He's not going to waste a minute of this. And I am not alone this morning in speculating that the 6-week trial schedule that we had all originally been told was the plan may in fact be quite a bit shorter, because Merchan is just simply not going to allow this case to get off track into unnecessary delays. This, by the way, is a sign of a very experienced and conscientious judge. And I think it bodes in favor of the prosecution, frankly, that this judge is not going to entertain delays, waiting periods, and the like. Okay, so it's very good that we've started with David Pecker, and I'm very optimistic about this from the standpoint of where this case is headed. I did want to mention a couple of other things here, though, which is that we now have an indication based on scheduling, as the judge said at the end of today's proceedings, which, by the way, ended early because the judge, a juror had a dental issue. I want to just clear up for everyone. This is a different juror from the juror who had a concern about press coverage that began the court's proceedings this morning. All right, 2 different issues. But we now know, based on the schedule for tomorrow, that the judge is setting aside an hour and a half of time for the GAG order hearing. And that is in stark contrast to the 40 minutes he gave to the prosecution for opening statements and the 20 minutes that he gave to the defense. All right. So we can expect that this GAG order hearing tomorrow morning is going to be quite robust. An hour and a half for a proceeding like this, where there's already been papers filed and it's already been raised, as it was on Friday, with additional allegations concerning Trump's violations of the GAG order, is an indication that this is not going to be a brief hearing. It may, by the way, mean that Donald Trump could be called to the stand to testify before the judge, and this will all be conducted outside of the jury's presence, okay? He may be called to testify by the judge as to his intention or the facts of his violations of the gag order. And I want to just point out to everyone, by the way, that we've already had another gag order violation this morning because when Trump was leaving court today, he stopped to berate and question the veracity of Michael Cohen. Called Michael Cohen a liar, claimed that he had perjured himself. And of course, the gag order itself says that Trump is prohibited from making any comments about witnesses in the case. So we have a true watershed moment coming up tomorrow morning. I'm not going to tell anyone how it's going to go. I'm going to tell everybody that the prosecution had asked for a $1,000 fine for each violation when there were only 3 a week ago. Now we have, I think, 11 violations of the gag order between posts on Truth Social and statements that Donald Trump has made. And so it's kind of anybody's guess what the judge is likely to do with this. I mean, I will just tell you that I think in light of where we are, I would expect to see a substantial fine for this first round and an extremely stern warning to Donald Trump that if he violates the gag order again in any small way, he can expect to go to jail. I'm going to remind everybody again here as well that violations of the court's order are either $1,000 a pop or jail time up to 30 days. And I don't want somebody already did this to me again on Threads today. I'm so annoyed by it. I don't want anybody to be doing this thing of like, oh, it's just going to be another $1,000 fine. I have to remind everyone that, again, there is a big picture at stake here. We are in the middle of a trial that could lead to a guilty verdict. And we do not want an accusation on appeal that this judge has indicated an unfair bias toward Donald Trump by sticking him in prison without adequate due process. All right. So everybody needs to take a breath on this. This is not nothing happening. Yes, it could end up in a series of smaller fines before he ends up in jail, because we all know that he's not going to be able to keep his mouth shut as the trial proceeds. All right. But please don't anybody take this if that's how this comes out tomorrow. And it may not be. Like, he may just say, pack your toothbrush, head to jail overnight. However this turns out tomorrow, though, I do not want anybody making the assumption that this means that Trump is getting off. If you make any assumption whatsoever, it should be an assumption that the judge is following protocol to make sure that a jury verdict is not overturned on appeal. All right. Be thoughtful. Be smart about it. Do not engage in this kind of, frankly, as we've discussed many, many times here over the last few weeks, do not engage in that kind of voter suppression of like, there's never any accountability for Donald Trump. Like, I'm sorry. $500 million fine in the New York civil fraud case, $93 million judgment in the E. Jean Carroll case. Well, it's actually way beyond that. It's like $200 million. And then, you know, here he is now facing a jury for crimes that could land him in prison for the rest of his life. So everybody keep the big picture in mind, no matter what happens tomorrow at the gag order hearing. And I really want people to be very, very thoughtful. See the big picture of what this judge is doing in the context of the totality of the trial, no matter what the outcome is tomorrow of this hearing. But I'm just going to say one other thing about this. I think Judge Merchan is out of patience and should be. And so I'm not going to, I mean, it's hard to make, let me just say this. Where I was on this last week when it was just 3 violations was like, yes, we're going to see a fine and then we'll have a threat of jail time. I don't know any longer. And I think that despite all the things that have been said in the courtroom, the fact that the prosecution has now raised this twice in front of the judge, that we have a hearing scheduled for tomorrow, and he continues to violate the gag order. I think that the prosecution, you know, and I'll just remind everybody, we talked about this last week too. Alvin Bragg gave an interview saying they were debating what they were going to ask for in terms of sanctions. They may walk in there tomorrow and say that Trump should be in jail overnight. I'm just going to point out that I don't know that this is like a given that it's only going to be fines tomorrow. If it is, I think expectations should be tempered, but I'm really not sure. And I think it's really clear at this point that, you know, Trump cannot be controlled, and it may take some time in the clink to get him to comply with the gag order so that there isn't interference with witnesses and the jury. You know, I mean, it just at this point is quite a dangerous situation. Let's put it that way. All right. Final note for today that has been breaking news since the proceedings in front of the judge ended this morning. Very big breaking news out of the courtroom, which is that the court is going to release the daily transcripts of the trial to the public. This is a huge deal because, as everyone knows, we don't have audio and we don't have video of what's happening inside the courtroom. We have been reliant until now on press, live blogging, essentially, live posting on Threads and elsewhere, the minute-by-minute proceedings of what's taking place in the court. This, by the way, is an incredible investment and a sign of how seriously the court is taking this proceeding. Because ordinarily, and I will just tell you this from my own experience, somebody said this morning that transcripts are usually about $6.50 a page. I have seen them in cases where transcripts are being released in rapid order rather than being released after the fact, let's say like a month later, where court reporters have time and they're balancing out their time at a much higher page rate than $6.50 a page. Okay, so this is daily, and pages, by the way, are like maybe 24 lines. So this is an incredible investment of money by the people of the state of New York to release these transcripts in this critically important case for American democracy. And one of the things that's really great about this is it means we're going to be able to see exactly what was said by every witness on a regular basis, like a daily basis. We're going to know exactly what was said by every witness. This, by the way, is also going to make it much easier to consider the validity of any claims that Donald Trump might have on appeal, because we'll all be able to look at exactly what was said, what evidence was admitted, And, there's not going to be as much of an opportunity, by the way, for Donald Trump or his lackeys to misstate what happened in the courtroom, because we're all going to be able to see it. We're going to be able to see what was said by a given witness. We're going to be able to quote it word for word. And that, by the way, for people like me, but as well as for other folks, reporters in mainstream media and the like, print media, broadcast media, they're going to be able to look at all of this on a daily basis and report on it. And that, by the way, is really good news for us also from the standpoint of the presidential election, because it just means that it's going to be much harder for disinformation to circulate through social media and otherwise by Trump, his people, or his enablers. All right. And that, I think, is progress. It's much harder for the general public to be gaslit when there's actual transcripts of what is being said in that courtroom that will be released on a daily basis. So big thumbs up, $6.50. Big thumbs up to this development today. I personally am very happy about this. So even this morning, while I was getting ready to broadcast the first time around, I was kind of bemoaning as I was thinking about all this, the lack of audio, because even audio would make this a lot easier on those of us who are kind of doing this regular commentary through a legal and a political lens. And so to have the transcripts is going to be really important. And I'm excited about it, frankly. So that's the good news. All right. That is it for today. So reminder, I want to remind everybody of the schedule. Tomorrow we have court proceedings beginning at 9:30. That will be the gag order hearing. The jury has been called back at 11. At 11 o'clock, assuming the gag order hearing is over, by which point hopefully we will have a ruling from the bench. If we do not, it could be the following day or whenever the judge decides, but I don't expect it will be long. At 11 o'clock, the jury will be called back in and David Pecker will retake the stand. We are currently in the part of direct examination. After direct examination is over, David Pecker will be cross-examined by the defense, and then there will be an opportunity for there to be rebuttal testimony where there will be redirect, what's called redirect, where the prosecution will again be able to ask additional questions in light of how David Pecker has been crossed. That is the format that is going to be used with every single witness here, and we will continue this process until the prosecution rests its case. All right. So that's where we are. We do not yet know who the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth witness is going to be for the prosecution, but we do have a very good idea about where things are moving right now on the basis of the opening statements that were made this morning. And I'm optimistic. I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm really optimistic. One more bit of really good news before we get to anything else. I just want to note that the Biden administration has made a huge investment in climate and green energy this morning. I have this posted on my threads, but it's a big deal. So reminder, things continue apace while we are also focused on the Trump trial. And let's not forget that, Joe Biden is trying every day to do great things for the American people. All right. If you have not yet joined us here, please hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button below this on YouTube. And don't forget that if you want to ask me questions before every broadcast and get notification before every bonus broadcast of when it's coming, you can become a paid subscriber at patreon.com/resistancelive for as little as $2 a month. At this point, that's roughly a nickel a broadcast. If I'm helping you learn more about the law, if I'm supporting you and talking you off the ledge, please consider this a donation to PBS or NPR. We're small here. I have a team behind me that needs to get paid. And this work obviously takes up a lot of my working day these days, in addition to everything else that we do here. So much love to all of you. I will catch you all here very soon. I'm going to remind you all that disinformation is circulating about a Chiron on MSNBC. I'm literally seeing people post about this right now. The Chiron that you think was on MSNBC about things about David Pecker being leaked to the media, which looks very salacious, is photoshopped. Please be very thoughtful about what you share. All right. Much love, everyone. I will catch you all here live tomorrow, and I will see you all here at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern for the rest of the week as predicted, and bonus broadcasts when necessary. All right, my friends, catch you tomorrow. Bye.